Hi everyone, hope you're doing well. Welcome along to the next episode of Spill the Beans. My guest this week is Dr Gyles Morrison, who, as the name suggests, initially trained as a medical doctor with the NHS in the UK, worked as a junior doctor for 3 years, and then decided he wanted to do something a little bit more creative. And he's always been interested in technology, which we'll go into in a bit more detail. So he's now a clinical UX designer in Germany for Boehringer Ingelheim. Dr Gyles has got really interesting views on the kind of UX sphere and clinical UX sphere. It's obviously very, very different from working as a digital UX designer for a non-healthcare related product or business or platform. There's so much more work that has to go into, or it's just different work rather, that goes around, the UX research piece and I suppose the risk mitigation side of the designs that they're doing. Quite a different role from most other UX designers, but still really interesting to hear from him and hear the work that he's getting up to and the kind of challenges they're facing on a daily basis, particularly around the COVID pandemic. So I hope you enjoyed it as well, and take it away. Gyles, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me this afternoon. How's everything going? Whereabouts in the world are you right now?
Yeah, life is good. So I live in a small town called Boehringer, which is just about an hour's drive west from Frankfurt in Germany.
Ah, beautiful, beautiful. So, can you tell me a little bit more about the situation then? Obviously that's not a very German accent. So, where have you come from? What's kind of led you up to be in the position you're in now?
Yeah, so I originally am from the United Kingdom, born and raised in East London. So yeah, very, very far from home here in Germany. And it has been quite an interesting journey because as much as I work as a UX designer at Boehringer Ingelheim, a big pharmaceutical company out here in Germany, international company, I didn't start out in that field. I started out in medicine as a doctor. So I was born and raised in Tower Hamlets in East London, and then studied after obviously secondary school and primary school and the like at Barts and London School of Medicine and Dentistry in Whitechapel, so still in the East End. And then I spent about 3 years working as a medical doctor up in Yorkshire, which was quite far away from East London. After those 3 years, well, even after about a year, I realized I wanted to be doing something a bit more different, more hands-on, a lot more freedom of time, because there's a lot of night shifts, weekend shifts, long day shifts, on call and the like with working as a doctor. And I really missed being creative. It's not a very creative job all the time. It's a lot of paperwork. And so I thought, well, what about digital health? What about something involving IT? Because I loved IT, also love graphic design, visual design, and just in general problem solving, because working as a doctor is problem solving, although in that case, you're strictly speaking, solving people's medical problems. But now that I've specialized in clinical UX and healthcare UX, I actually have the opportunity to solve problems on a much bigger scale that could impact the lives of millions of people rather than, the couple dozen that I might see in a day when I'm working a shift, depending on the responsibilities I would have in a hospital setting. So getting specifically to Boehringer Ingelheim, I would say has been a 5-year journey. I've been in the field for just over 5.5 years now. Started out, didn't really know anything about UX. I was working as a clinical analyst at Guy's St Thomas's Hospital in London. And that's where I slowly started learning more about user experience and the whole process of trying to meaningfully find out the insights of users' everyday habits and the tasks they're trying to complete, the challenges that they're facing, to then create solutions that make their lives better. And that was very much a clinical focused projects that I would be on, where it's dealing with doctors, nurses, other healthcare professionals. And when I saw that UX is actually a career back in around, I'll say February 2015, thought get a master's degree, get some mentors, become well read on the topic. And I've worked with a number of companies over the years, obviously started out in the NHS. I've also worked with European Patent Office. I've worked with one of the academic health science networks. So these are organizations part of the NHS which would support with innovation and in not just technology, but service provision for the NHS. So I was working with that and then contracting for a bit, working on a number of projects, primarily in healthcare. And then the opportunity came to go to Germany to work for this wonderful big pharma company here in Germany. and I took it. It's been quite an adventurous time over the past 7 months. I moved out here back in October 2019 with my wife. She's actually a German national, so moving over here became a lot easier because at least she could speak the language.
Yeah.
My German is not particularly good.
Yeah, it can be a bit challenging, I suppose, relocating. So, I mean, that's a really interesting, career path. It's obviously definitely not that common, but in general, from like a sort of more day-to-day perspective, are you seeing still correlations between the skills that you picked up and the knowledge that you picked up on the clinical and medical side, and how to impact that into the UX? I mean, into the UX realm, because I can imagine that people working for a design agency or anything like that might not need to know quite as much around this sort of context that you do around the medical side, but it would be slightly different working for a pharmaceutical business, right? I mean, how do those two things kind of match up?
Yeah, so I would say that there's two parts to this, because there's definitely a first stage of transferable skills that comes from most clinicians or other people who have a discipline that involves significant problem solving and a problem solving process. So you would find that architects, for example, engineers make for great UX designers as well, because they have to go through a process of there's a brief, and how do I deal with so many different constraints in order to deliver the best result to that brief. And it's not that dissimilar to even working as a doctor. Someone comes to you and say, I'm sick. You've got to understand how their physiology, their gender, their age, the current other diseases that they have could impact the disease that they've got now that you're trying to treat, and what treatment that you would give. So there's still challenges and boundaries and things that you need to overcome in order to treat them. So that whole process of problem solving is wholly transferable, which is wonderful. But then specifically in pharma, for sure I get to what I refer to as hit the ground jogging, where I've already got some meaningful understanding of medicine, of ways of working for clinicians, which again is transferable across the world. So there was recently a time I had to do some work in China, thankfully before the pandemic. And, as much as I've not worked as a doctor in China, there's definitely still ways that you would treat people of a certain disease, regardless of age, gender, so on and so forth. That would be the same in China, in the United Kingdom, in Germany, anywhere in the world. And so that's what I think has helped with my career development a lot, is that I am bringing in a lot of that medical knowledge and understanding of ways of dealing with patients and ways of clinicians working with each other, and the issues that clinicians and patients face using technology in healthcare. And that's for sure helped me a lot with working on projects.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I imagine the whole, clinical side of UX and, being a UX within a sort of healthcare and pharmaceutical business is completely different from being, a UX designer for, a sort of private startup or something like that, which is unrelated to the medical industry. I mean, there must be a lot of, regulations around the sort of research and stuff like that you do, which separates that from those other kind of UX designers and stuff like that. I mean, is it the same kind of job? I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
No, there's definitely unique challenges. So, for example, pharmaceutical companies directly are not supposed to deal with patient data. They're not really supposed to have that relationship. It can be seen as an abuse of their power because of the fact that these companies are worth billions. So actually, you would need to work with partners, or you need to have a separate legal entity in order to access patient data if that's the sort of route that you're trying to go through. And then the other thing to keep in mind with pharma is the fact that, or not just pharma, but in healthcare in particular, is that because you're dealing with people's health rather than, they bought the wrong product on this e-commerce site, or, they're not too happy with the look of this website, it's a bit clunky. Like those are things that can frustrate, but it's not going to kill someone dealing with a website that's a bit broken. Whereas, we could be creating solutions that in effect is supposed to be replacing you seeing a doctor or a nurse or other healthcare professional. And if we were to get it wrong, it could kill them. So the work that we do is very, very regulated. Oftentimes we're not just in our company, but lots of other digital health companies will be thinking, well, how do we ensure that this is going to have the right result, for one, but also be trusted by the medical community? And to tick both of those boxes normally involves being compliant with regulation around software as a medical device, but that's what it is in effect. If you are going to an app, for example, that's supposed to tell you what drugs to take and what time of the day, when you're supposed to switch to a new drug, that's a medical device, a device that's providing medical treatment to you. Well, software is a medical device, specifically in that situation. And you can't get it wrong. So there is regulations about that. And if you don't get the regulations right, your product can't go to the market. And you kind of failed on your endeavor.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's the impact that it can have, I suppose, both from a negative and a positive for the end user is kind of magnified so much more within these kind of industries. So in general, then, from the kind of, the types of projects you're involved with, is it largely, those kind of, customer focused projects, or is there sort of internal stuff within Boehringer that you're doing as well? I mean, what's the sphere for a UX healthcare designer?
So I'll say specifically in my situation, working at Boehringer Ingelheim, it's quite mixed the work that you could do. Definitely there's patient-facing stuff that we would work on. For sure there's stuff internally because, we're a company that has to manufacture drugs as well. So it's looking at how can we make things more efficient, more effective in the workplace for colleagues in the production of drugs, but also even colleagues in IT. And as well, people forget that as a company that's got like 50,000 people, you're going to have people that just needs IT support, just needs to use regular, Microsoft suite of software that needs to be maintained. But looking at how does that fit into their workflow? How do you support them being able to perform their tasks? So there's all kinds of interesting stuff that is completely removed from patient-facing products or something that directly impacts patients' care or even production of drugs, but just looking at how do we have people who are within the healthcare ecosystem to work more efficiently. And I think that's where a lot of healthcare professionals fit in, is that there's times when they're working as a UX designer to help their colleagues in the healthcare company do their job to the best of their ability, but that work of those colleagues aren't necessarily patient-facing colleagues. And for sure as well, that you're seeing a rise of UX professionals working in digital therapeutics. So specifically a digital solution that can prevent, treat, or manage a disease. And we need to have more people with specialist knowledge in that area, because that's the future. That's what we need to have more of our professionals working on, because gone are the days where it's just as simple as saying to someone, just go to the GP, just go to the doctor and everything will be made better. It has now come to a point where actually you've got to think, what can I do with my mobile phone? What can I be doing on my own? What can I be doing from home? Because there's just so many people. Like, we're nearly 8 billion people on the planet. We can't keep thinking everybody just rock up to a doctor. And it's these sort of challenges that I'm seeing that the healthcare UX industry on the whole is slowly, very, very slowly getting towards.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose quite a popular question that I ask is, what's your sort of views on the whole digital healthcare industry in general, and what do you think needs to happen and stuff like that? But I guess from the design perspective, because that needs to come around, so much earlier than the the actual implementation of these products as well. I mean, have you seen much around? I mean, I'm going to ask the question basically that I said I wasn't going to ask, but I mean, so in general, from the I suppose the whole sort of overall digital health sphere, from a design perspective, are you seeing many kind of trends in that at the moment?
Yeah, I think definitely the trends is digital therapeutics, as mentioned before. But the unfortunate trend as well I'm noticing is that people would think that it's appropriate to create a digital solution for people who are already quite healthy because it's safe. Now, it's quite easy to make a product that's someone who already does yoga and is on a vegan diet, and they're hiking up mountains every weekend, and they're probably quite wealthy as well. That these people need support with what diet they should be subscribing to and what exercise regime they should have. Like, those aren't people that need help. The people that need help is someone who has noticed a lump and they've not got it checked. That they've noticed this new mark on their arm, and it's been growing and it's starting to actually ulcerate and it hurts a bit, and they're not doing anything about it. Those are people that you need to reach out to. Someone who's been given a diagnosis and they've got instructions and they know that they should stop smoking and they should change their diet and lose weight and exercise more, but they're not doing it. Those are people that we need to be dealing with. Those are the ones that require huge amounts of money each year to deal with chronic conditions that they're never going to recover from, but could have been completely cured of, or even prevented that disease from happening in the first place, had we engaged with them better. And that's behavior change. And that's what I think is often missing with digital therapeutics. We're dealing with products that we're given to an audience who is already doing healthy things. And we need to be focused on how can we help people who are not healthy, who are not actually owning their health, who are not managing their health, but is willing to use Candy Crush, is willing to, play some gambling game on their phone, is willing to actually do a day's work and earn money, but won't spend it on their own health. Like, these are people that we need to be trying to work on, because that is effort, that's hard. But if we can improve their health, for sure, those vegans with the really strong thighs, climbing the mountains, who are doing yoga all the time, they will be healthy as well. And that's how you get the world in general health. That's not the only part of the puzzle. There's still issues of, poverty and famine and stuff around the world. But this is an inequality that needs dealing with. We need to start looking at the health of people who are already sick and try and get their health up. And that's what I'm hoping we're going to start seeing more and more as the years go by in digital therapeutics.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting point that it's one thing having the access to healthcare, but for those people, particularly the elderly or anything like that, that might not be as technologically sound as, like you say, the kind of yoga community or whoever, you need to provide these people with the kind of care and have it as the kind of, the first solution for them, rather than sort of clogging up the NHS or whoever. Yeah. It's a very interesting point. I mean, you've raised some really, really good points here. So I presume off the back of this, there might be some people that might want to reach out and, potentially have a conversation if you're open to it as well. What's the best way for people to get in contact with you?
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn. Just search for Dr. Gyles Morrison. Google search for Dr. Gyles Morrison, GYLESMORRIOSN. Just find me online. You can get to my personal website. Also check out clinicalux.org to find out more about the Clinical UX Association. So that's a global community of clinicians, UX and IT professionals who are also passionate about healthcare UX.
Fantastic. Well, look, Gyles, I'll let you get on with the rest of your day. Thank you very much for taking a little break with me. But it's really, really interesting and informative. So I don't think the conversation is going to stop here somehow. But thank you very, very much, and enjoy the rest of your day.
You too. Take care now. Bye-bye.
Cheers. That's a wrap for us then, guys. Thank you so much to Gyles. One thing that has developed since we recorded this podcast is actually Gyles is going to be joining me on another platform that I've got, which is called Product Circle, which is another meetup group which takes place on YouTube live stream at the moment. So we're going to be doing a clinical UX meetup. So he's going to be going into things in a little bit more detail, doing a presentation alongside another clinical UX designer. So that'll be taking place on July 2nd. So I hope you managed to come along to that one as well if you enjoyed this. Otherwise, I'll see you for the next one. Cheers, guys.
Spilling the Beans Digital Health Podcast is aimed at members of the digital health community globally, with guests from the United Kingdom, Australia and the United States. The podcast is available through all major podcast distributors as well as on YouTube. The show is sponsored by Woodrow Mercer Technology and Woodrow Mercer Digital Health.